It was so cool when you hit me up because I was driving on the way back from Aspen.
Okay.
And I was thinking like, this is your time. You're not all stacked up with work. You can get a couple of interviews in. There was actually an interview that another one I was trying to get to. I was down in Aspen, but it just didn't happen. And on the way up, I was like, okay, man, you gotta get. And then I was like, Lamar, dude, I gotta get Lamar. I got this time. I gotta hit him up as soon as I get back to Salt Lake. So I got back yesterday. I was unloading my vehicle. And on the way back, on that drive, I was talking to myself like, you gotta get this, you got a good momentum right now. Hit Lamar up, and I swear to God, I was unpacking stuff out of the car. I was on stuff like getting my snowboard equipment out, getting my clothes that I had, all of that, and you hit me up. So I was like, perfect.
Nice.
Perfect.
I was feeling bad too because I was like, oh man, because it's so busy and like with all my own stuff, worrying about this stuff, and I was like, oh man, I felt bad that I haven't contacted you sooner. So now I'm glad. It's like, oh, perfect timing then.
It was freaking perfect timing because I might have been in that kind of the same situation as you, where work and everything gets caught up and
it's stressful, man. When you're like, yeah, because when you like do your own creative projects, yeah, you're not getting paid to do it all of your time and effort to produce stuff.
One of the things that I thought was awesome, man, was tell me your Twitter handle.
Oh wait, my Twitter handle, my Twitter handle is I think it's just my name.
No, it's not. I think it's like.
I put a successful comedian, Lamar Kellywood.
That is fantastic. Dude, everybody needs to do that. Everybody has to put the fantastic or the successful, whatever you do in front of your name.
I thought it was funny because it's just like, if I just tell people this, maybe they'll just believe it.
You know what? I think it's fantastic. I should be like, Anthony Guzman, fantastic social worker.
Yeah.
Because it's something for yourself, too.
It is.
That is why I love comedy.
Yeah.
Because there's a thing about how the craft, there's so much jest but reality intertwined with it. And that's the comedians that just resonate with us the most.
Yeah.
We see ourselves.
I totally agree.
So I love that. When I followed you on Twitter and when I saw that, I laughed. I thought that was dope.
Yeah.
I've been saving that one forever, wanting to tell you about how I thought that was great.
I'm glad you like it. I was telling Celeste, I think even this morning, I was like, even as like a native person, it's like I have to fight myself to, because like being like a positive mindset, it's like not neutral. I have this like, and a lot of native people do, even without thinking about it, they have like an inferiority complex, and it's like, it comes usually from like an environment or from like just growing up in like, in colonial states, like with these settler states, and like how they view us, and like, a lot of the way that we're taught is like education, but it's all stuff like not made by native people. It's so large, widespread. It's like you forget that, that you have to like tell yourself that, that you are worth any. See, I have a hard time even doing it now. Just like that, you're worthy of anything.
When did you become conscientious of that?
I became more conscious of it, thinking about like how many native kids are like growing up now, and like how the population's growing. So I think by like the statistics, they say like I think half of the population of native people are under 18, under 25. And I was thinking like, oh man, that's massive. And thinking about like just growing up in native communities, like you learn how to be tough, but there's not like a lot of affection from like my elders and stuff, like physical affection or like compliments. They show you they love you in different ways. They like by teaching you like life way teachings, and like making sure that you're like safe, making sure that you're like well. But I didn't get a whole lot of that, and like instead of being like mad about it, instead of being like frustrated that like, oh, they never like made me feel like I could go and do anything. Instead of like being upset, I was like, oh, I'll just be that for the native youth.
When did you like hear that? When you became conscientious of that actual discussion going on in your own head, when did you catch it? Did you catch it when they were saying, oh, you can't do that, or you're not supposed to be a comedian.
Yeah.
Or, you're not supposed to live in this really dope apartment
Yeah.
in a wonderful city. Like, I don't know, I'm making up stuff, but was there a moment when you was like, whoa, I'm doing that? Or Or maybe are you still just kind of maybe becoming more aware of it today?
Oh yeah, I think it was like a slow process of like my like early to mid late 20s. I guess my whole 20s then. When I finally got out on my own as like a young native guy, all of a sudden like it was up to me to do everything for just myself, be my whole positive reinforcement and be my own like hype person, you know what I mean? Like I grew up like in my nation like my whole childhood, my whole life. And then I moved out here. It was like, oh, there's definitely an absence of native people, native like culture. And then I started noticing, wait, why do I do that? Why do I think that? Why do I do that to myself? Why do I like put myself down or like tell myself that like I'm not good enough for this or I don't really like deserve it? And it's not as strong as that. It's like it was subtle, like it was subtly like. Oh, you know what is the best example is when I started drawing, doing like portraits and stuff, and then I was like doing portraits and I was like trying to get my all the proportions correct and like all the depth so it actually looked great. And then I noticed, oh, I'm not drawing any people of color. I'm drawing like mostly just white people. And I was like, that's for my own brain.
Wow.
I was like, inside my head there's like white people are there and like native people and like people of color they're not in there coming out. It was revealing because it's like I just subtly seen that what my own brain was doing.
That's beautiful, man. Like, not maybe beautiful in the way that you had a moment of reflection and consciousness and understanding. Like, whoa, what is this?
Yeah, it really was an epiphany.
Yeah, and you were able to take that moment and do something good with it.
Yeah.
You know?
And that just that one moment, it like made me think about all types of things, just being like, wait, why is that? And it's like, that's weird. It's funny just because of like, oh, I never even thought about it. I didn't know that I was doing like that to myself. And it's like, and then just wanted to explore like, wait, how does that happen then? And I'm like, if it's happening to me and it's like subtle, like it's probably happening to a lot of Native people, a lot of people of color.
I think right now in the world we talk about, especially within Native communities, we really talk about historical trauma. Now, historical trauma is extremely complex and it covers all aspects of our lives to very prominent parts of it that we see, that we can point out to colonialism and reservation life.
Yeah.
But the very subtle things in which you're talking about, which is the narrative that we tell ourselves in this very subtle way. It's not blaring, but it's there.
Yeah.
You know, and even this, and I think you had a really, just listening to you, I love that you brought it up. Even with hugging, right?
Yeah.
Like even some of our, our elders or our friends, we've all done it. And especially the longer we're away from like res life, like myself,
Yeah.
I become way more like huggy.
Oh yeah, man.
Like more
like physically affectionate.
I know that
Yeah.
when you give somebody a hug, they're kind of just standing there all
Their
still,
arms
like,
are straight.
like, come on, stop it, that's enough. But I honestly think, again, that is a product of the historical trauma and the boarding school eras and all of those things. Like that was passed on. Because like even the youth people, they have we're tough and we're mean, and sometimes I think I don't necessarily believe that's really who we always were.
Yeah.
Like our children, we couldn't have been mean and
That's so true.
And I think that's a stereotype that we might have embraced.
Mm-hmm.
Not to take anything away from being tough youths
Yeah.
but I mean, we really have to change that, and it's cool that you're doing that. We can start to make those shifts of that. We can be loving and caring, and I think it really will benefit our kids.
Yeah.
So that was so cool you brought that. When you said, I was like, I could just see someone like.
I could totally see it now, man. It's like, it's hilarious. When I talk to my siblings, I have all of my siblings that are younger than me. I'm the oldest. So when I'm around them, I want to just make sure that they know I love them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I'm bad at staying in contact with people. So like when I'm there with them, like I want to make sure that they know that I love them, you know what I mean? And when I started doing it, they were uncomfortable. Like my oldest sister, she was like, ha, like, because she was just a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm just like, I love you, and I want you to know, like, I love you, and you're like,
oh man, that's so dude. Like I'm so happy to hear you say that. And working in the substance abuse field over the years, I've noticed a lot of that. I love you isn't something that I think is very that I didn't hear a lot. And I
Yeah.
remember when I started to do it, it was really hard for me. And I remember the first time, which is probably less than 6 or 7 years ago, that I said it to my mom and dad.
Yeah.
And you could see how freaking uncomfortable they were with it. But I was like, nah, man, I'm gonna keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so those little things, I think, make a huge difference. Now, here's one of my real bro theories. I think urban natives, we know now, this is facts, that there's more natives that live in cities now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what's happening now is more of the urban culture of urban natives is starting to, it's flourishing, it's getting stronger, and now it's starting to go back to the reservation.
Yeah.
As opposed to where the urban settings were always so influenced by reservation life and politics, ceremony, which is totally understandable.
Yeah.
Like even programming, that's kind of where I used to see it a lot, was programming was always like, look at, what are you guys doing out in the res with diabetes and
Mm-hmm.
culture and this, but now, because there's so many more natives in the cities, and we are intertribal, that we've picked up some different survival self-care mechanisms.
Yeah.
And we do have to support each other. We have to be optimistic and caring and loving.
Yeah.
And now it's starting to go back.
That is,
And
you're right, because I'm starting to notice it too, because it used to be like almost like two different separate worlds that, you know, people would say like, oh, they don't like belong together. I'm just like, wait a minute, it's all native land. Why am I making those like distinctions? It's the same place, it's just a city.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, when I look at the mountains here and in the basin and stuff, it's just like, it just reminds me of like, oh man, that's so beautiful. And I'm like, that's so cool that like the tribes live here in this like really great place for like forever, for like thousands of years, where it's like, man, even like thousands of years ago, like they still look at these like cool, these awesome mountains, and they get to like look at the snow caps. And like, I'm glad that the mountains are actually so close, because it helps me like feel like I'm not disconnected from like just like the environment or like from home.
One of the things that captured my imagination when I was in Germany and Vienna, there were so many people, they asked me where I'm from, because like, oh, the Americans.
Yeah.
All the Americans,
Yeah.
the way we walk and the way you carry yourself. We're all Americans in some way.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, we're natives, but
They can tell you're American. Yeah.
right there. But I remember so many times that when people asked where I was from, they were like, Salt Lake City? Dude, Europeans love Salt Lake City because they're snow people. They love skiing.
Oh,
So
okay.
They were so pumped when I would tell them from Salt Lake City, or I was from Utah.
Yeah.
Salt Lake City, Salt Lake
Oh,
City.
they already knew what you were talking about. They didn't have to explain
They
it.
were so stoked about it. They didn't think, like you say right now, oh, and Mormons and then.
Yeah, but like other people in America will do that
The
stuff.
first thing that they was like, Salt Lake City's a beautiful city. Like we've been to Salt Lake City, and we had people in our group that were from San Francisco, Oakland, Oklahoma, Phoenix,
Okay.
all in a group. But noticing when we were, conversing in groups of people, Salt Lake City really intrigued folks because of the mountains. Like you said, they just skiing and snowboarding. So that tripped me out, and I was kind of proud of that. Like, cool, man. People think about, the only thing they don't think about when they think about Utah is the LDS culture.
Yeah.
They see ski culture too.
I wanted to make this kind of comedy, kind of like informative, like handbook, and I wanted to call it the Urban Indigenous Survival Guide, and just being like how to like be native and survive like in the city. Writing and producing and drawing and like doing this stuff is like, it's a lot harder than I expected. Just because also it just like I want it to be right and actually like informative and not misinformative. It's like trying to write something that's like a guide it's more responsibility than if I say that I'm being helpful and I give misinformation, like it could be harmful to someone. Like I think it's valuable, and then like if I messed it up, like I would be devastated. So it takes me a long time to like get all this stuff done. Because like I want to make informative material for people. The responsibility of it, like it slows me down because it freaks me out. You know, the harm of like misinformation and like stereotyping and like how it limits a lot of Native people. It's crazy because like in the city, like people don't think I'm Native. People usually think I'm Asian, like just because they don't see a lot of Native people. They don't understand that we look diverse in the way that we actually look, which is like downside of like mascots and stuff. There's only like a singular image that they want to embrace. And people still think like what's not a big deal But then it's like, no, it's actually harmful because it's like very limiting to like who we can be or like.
You know, I'm really glad that you brought this up because I think when we spoke initially, very briefly, that we introduced and you were talking about your comedy and you talked about this. My impression was that you were kind of just going to be jesting and making fun of it, but now that I think I'm hearing you actually unpacking it, you're like, ooh, this is a little bit more.
Yeah.
There's a
You're
bigger
right.
thing. There's a bigger thing here going on.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you're clarifying that to me because that was the impression that I initially had.
Yeah. When I first moved here, I didn't do jokes about being Native because it's so difficult to approach the subject. It's like telling jokes about your parents. You know what I mean? It's difficult to do, and like when I did do certain jokes, I would be like, I don't even know how they're taking this because like I'm like laying on these like nuanced jokes, but I'm trying to make fun of like things that people associate with Natives. But I don't know if they're getting that I'm making fun of it or they think I'm just reinforcing like stereotypes. And it's like it's hard to do because I can't just stand there for 5 minutes and tell them what it means to like be in the situation that I'm talking about or how we interact with like culture that's not our own, like settler culture. And then do a 3 minute joke because it's just so they can have context of what I'm actually trying to like joke about.
The craft, that is the beauty of that craft.
Yeah.
That you do that, like,
And
when I heard that, I was like, dude, this is dope, man. Like, I knew immediately I wanted to talk to you.
And I have done like irresponsible material because I was just like, man, I wanted to laugh so good, and I think the joke's like worth it. But at the end of me doing the jokes, I'll be like, oh man, I can't really like in good faith continue to do these jokes because they're like more harmful than I want them to be. Like it just reminded me of being like growing up as a Native kid. How over and over and over again the topic of responsibility would come up. I was always a joking person, right? I was always doing bits. I was always doing jokes, especially like in school and stuff. And they would always come for me when I would like stand out, when I would like be too loud or be too like funny. Like when I would I remember making funny signs and like at like sporting events while I'm helping to do the concession. And then I would always get approached by older Native people, and they would always like tell me like, you can't do this, you can't do that. And as a kid, I was like, as just a kid, or like I would be like, whatever, like you're just like you're raining on my parade because I'm having fun. You're trying to like you're just upset for like. But I didn't realize at the time that they were like telling me like when you do things, when you like make a joke and you make it large and you make it like to everyone, it's like you are being responsible. It's a responsibility that you are undertaking. They were telling me they're like that's the power you have. Like your words have power, your actions have power. Like everything has repercussions. How you frame things, how you say it, it's like the intention. It's like that's all very, very like there's a lot of responsibility in that. And you can't just off the cuff make jokes because in certain ways, and it's like it became kind of a minefield of like, oh well, I'm not gonna stop doing jokes though. Like that means I have to find out a way to make it funny with that and still be like basically responsible for like how it lands or like the context that it is in. And like when I first approached comedy, I'm like, oh, there's all this stuff that I'm not gonna not consider. So it made it harder to write material because I'm like. I grew up with that from like my elders, from my teachers, from like my parents, like just my community. Like it informed my life, and it made me also realize how a lot of like other cultures, there's a lack of that in their culture. Like they're not taught like when you like go on Twitter and you like make like homophobic jokes or like transphobic jokes or like sure you're commenting on it or but it's like you don't know how you're perpetuating it, and maybe someone on the other end of that line, because the suicide rates are so high in some of these areas and some of these people, and it's like who knows that someone might see that and it could be like the hay that like breaks the camel's back.
I was formulating some of these thoughts and conversation even with my cousin Skylar down in Aspen, because now he's a little older than I am, but I remember having a conversation conversation with a few of my peers saying, I don't think it's specifically unique to Native people, but I do know that it's definitely ingrained in us. No matter which family we came from, what socioeconomic family that we came from, but we are expected to represent
Yeah.
the community. And
Yeah.
that, it is such a big responsibility.
It's a lot.
It's monumental because we're expected to represent the community in broader society, but even like in our communities. There was a moment in my life when I was like, man, I was like Dennis Rodman,
Yeah.
or Charles Barkley. I'm not a role model. I'm not
Yeah,
a role model. That's
exactly.
not my responsibility. That's your family.
Oh man.
But you know what? The older and more mature, I guess you could say, I've
Yeah.
become, the reality of that has set in is like I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
don't. I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice that I have to be really conscientious of what I say, what I do, how I conduct myself, and that can be a very stressful responsibility. So now hearing you wrangle with that one's like with your comedy and with some of these things, these projects that you're working on, I appreciate that.
Oh, I'm glad.
There's a reflection there. There's a reflection in thinking going on, and reflection in thinking is so freaking critical.
Yeah.
It's so important and powerful. So yeah, man, I'm stoked about this project you're working on.
That reminds me of like my early 20s where I wouldn't tell people I was Native because I didn't want my bad behavior to be associated with Native people. Because like in my early 20s, I was just like, I don't want to care about anything else but just like my own selfish wants. And as I was like just being like very reckless and like just like it's what I wanted to do, because it's like growing up in a community, especially around all my peers. It's like if I were to act out at home, like it would reflect on my family, it would reflect on my people, it would reflect on my community, and then it wouldn't go away. You know what I mean? It's a lot to always be that responsible, and it's a lot of work. It can feel oppressive where it's like I can't cut loose or act out or be human. I can't be flawed. I can't like make mistakes. I can't like. So when I moved here, I was like, oh, no one knows me here. I was like, people don't even know I'm Native if I don't tell them. All of that like that need to and be responsible and to like think about all the time. Like for that like moment, I could let it go, and that was. I feel like it was really liberating because then I could just be awful, but it was only reflected on me as an individual person, and no one was being like, "Oh, Natives are all like this," or "Oh, they just do this, they just do that." They wouldn't have to like it wouldn't reflect badly on Native people, and I think that we need that sometimes. It's hard because like even the jokes that I'm doing now, which is like. I want people to understand, like, why can't we be flawed sometimes? Like, why can't, like, it doesn't make us unredeemable. It doesn't have to reflect badly on us all the time. It's like, oh, it really makes you feel like I can't be, like, an individual. They just remind you of your responsibility. And it's out from outside of your community. Even though they have no, like, investment in you as a person, they're still reminding you that how responsible you are for, like, the look of, like, Native people in general. Mm-hmm. It's like one of those things that's like, oh, I didn't know I needed to do that, and I didn't know that that was waiting for me to come out when I had the chance to like not be like a responsible person, especially responsible about Native stuff. So when I started doing comedy, I just like I rarely talked about being Native, and when I started doing stand-up, because I just wanted to know if like I could just do it just on my own merit of just being a person. Like, can I make these people laugh? Just jokes about my day-to-day life, and also like it was just jokes that I think would just reflect badly on Natives if I was always just the Native comedian, and it's like.
So let me ask you about that. So do you make a distinction between yourself as being a Native comedian or just a comedian, or is it based on the context that you're in?
That's how I resisted like going on social media for so long, because I knew that it's not like I was afraid of being in the public eye, because that's what people are now learning, especially like social media and stuff. Like how like, oh, I can't just say whatever I want because it actually makes an impact on like society, and like I can get in trouble, and it's like, they're having a tough time with it. They're having like growing pains because they're all of a sudden they're being told they're responsible, but they didn't grow up being told they're responsible. So I can see how they're like, it's really confusing that all of a sudden they have to walk this like line of like all these things they never had to like do as growing up. I mean, for me, it's like it's a little bit easier because because I never not allowed to just be myself. They were always there telling me that I was a responsible person, and like that everything I do and say and think, it's a reflection, and it's like it's a responsibility. So it took me a long time to go onto social media because I knew once I started making a presence, and once I started like going on tours for comedy and stuff, I knew that I had to do both. I couldn't have a distinction between being native and a comedian because that's like, and I don't want to, but that's just it. But I don't want to because it's who I am. Like it informs like all of my decisions that I make, and like the things that I do, and like things I talk about. It's always relevant, and I was so afraid because it's like, oh, I gotta be perfect. It really does make me worry, like, oh, because that if I do anything that doesn't like fall like in line, and also like that's not like responsible, that like it could really do a lot of damage, and and uh, it made me worry so much that like I didn't engage in social media for a long time.
Well, one of the things that I was really excited about is, some years ago, I'd say like a decade ago, we had some native comics start coming up, and they were doing some great material at the beginning, but it faded for me because I started to think that it started to end up being like, so let's just push the stereotypes harder and harder and harder. And like I said, the early material I liked because it was original and it was still quote unquote native.
Yeah.
But then the material it just wasn't funny to me anymore.
Yeah.
It just wasn't funny to me anymore, like certain stereotypes and going over certain things again, it faded for me. So I was really excited about when it first came out, but then it started to fade. But I think the way that you're reflecting on it right now is fantastic, because I think there are other native comics out there, and they're on the come up.
Yeah, they are.
And I think to hear when I was out on the reservation, sometimes when I was working, I feel like I was alone, like nobody else, like am I crazy what I'm thinking? And then every once in a while I'd be lucky, like Doug would come out, or I'd have friends that would come out and visit me, like some of my friends from the Bay Area, and it was cool to talk to them because then I didn't feel alone. Like, hey, the ideas I'm having aren't super like crazy or weird or whatever. And so this is cool by doing an interview like this, and even the more interviews you'll do in the future is like, they don't have, maybe someone sitting on the reservation or maybe in a city where they feel isolated doesn't have to go and find you. Yeah. They can just hear you and be like, oh my gosh, this is cool. And give them inspiration. And one of the things I've been reading this book, it's called, I can't remember the guy's name, but it discusses like the social well-being of people, the social health of people. They're trying to incorporate that into healthcare now, finally.
Yeah, okay, that's right.
How social health is part of that. And one of the things that in the research has found was, it's absolutely important to have these very, very strong relationships and ties, family and friends. But there was a guy that did another study, and it talked about how your loose and distant relationships could actually be just, if not more, powerful. And this is why. If you have a really strong circle of friends and a group of people that you're constantly with, what happens is it becomes an echo chamber. Yeah. And so we validate each other, and the same kind of ideas and things come up. And even though that's great, sometimes information doesn't get passed. New information doesn't come in. So people that have looser ties, in relationships that are a little bit more distant and sometimes very distant, when they go out and have these conversations and discussions with people, they get new information and they can bring it back into the pool.
Okay, yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, so for so long, the research and the literature always talked about strong, very intimate relationships.
Oh, okay.
So I thought, I was like, so he tried to do, he wanted to look at the opposite of it, and that's what we came up with. So that's why when, again, I met you one time, you know, and I met you that one time, and actually was reading that before I went to Aspen, so it stuck in my mind. It's like, man, I met Lamar one time, but I know I got to sit down and talk with him because he might bring new information to me, things that I haven't been thinking about.
Yeah.
And you did, like you already have, and like even when you're saying, like, even my impression, the first impression was not anything like it was now, because this project in itself was like, no man, it's taking a whole new turn. Like, there's some more things I thought about.
That's so true. Like that's so true. What we were saying earlier about like trying to start projects. It's like once I started, I realized like how much more there was inside of it, and then I'm like, oh, that means I have to do this. I have to go and unpack that, and then like, and then where is that gonna lead? It's gonna lead to the next thing, and it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much that I need to know about, even just for my own self, just to be like effective and like effective like in my community. Like a lot of people that I know, they grow up and they're brash. They can be like distant and like standoffish, and it's like especially like seeing them on social media and stuff, and they're like, it should be like this should be like this, and then they're like, I can tell that they're irritated by something, and they're agitated, like they want to make a point. The response I get, I'm like, oh, it makes me want to respond in kind, like the same way, but I have to take a breather and step back and be like, that's not how you change someone's mind about any topic. You can't yell at them and then they're gonna be like, oh yeah, that was a really good idea, that you screamed at me that I was an idiot and I should see it this way instead of seeing it that way. They're not. It's not gonna go into them. And also they're not gonna feel like I actually care about them and their well-being. They're not gonna be like, oh, he actually like. It's not just something he's saying, is he actually like cares about me and like my family and my community. And I remember, and being on social media, it can be like very awful. You know, it can be harmful for people. But from like a lot of Native people, even ones on the internet, like even through the internet, they like teach me more lessons, because they're like, I like love my people and Navajo people, and we can be hard-headed a lot, and like I understand why they feel that way. You know what I mean? The way they feel like for certain areas, but I have to be the one to like approach them and like show them compassion, what it looks like, and show them what kindness is, and show them like we can have disagreements, and then at the end of the seconds be like, and still say like, I love you, like I want you to know that I care about you and I love you, and we can have differences, and that's okay. And I remember this Native guy, he wrote this thing on it. It was just like it could just be throwaway like comment sections and stuff. There's a lot of it's just reactions, being very reactive and polemic, like just responding with like being like very like upset and like and shouty. And he made a good point, which he's like, you know, it's actually valuable to have different perspectives. Like it's valuable for us to not have all the same perspective. And he's like, maybe we not agree on all things, and maybe I'm more conservative than like something like me. And he said, but those are the fact that we have like difference of opinion, the fact that we have different thoughts is like, that's valuable, because then we don't get into the echo chamber. We don't get narrow-minded with our, you know, with like just how we think or how we talk, and maybe realize I'm like, oh, this is valuable. Like it is valuable that we have different perspectives, that we have like different like ways of thinking, that, and then when we become a community again, we bring that all in, and there's some good that can come out of that.
One of these teachings that I had a while back, I don't know if it was in a lodge or if it was where it was at, but I remember this person saying, we have this perception of warriors as being brave and, you know, go to war and and these kinds of things. He said, but there's a lot of elements that go into that. And he goes, and this idea of medicine, so warrior and medicine, these two things work together. And he said, and even before we had horses or ways to get to places, let's say someone's sick up here in the mountains,
Yeah.
right? And they know, like, man, you know, we know the plants that grow here, we know the plants and all the medicinal things that grow in these mountains right here, but what we really need grows down south.
Yeah.
So they would send people down south. Maybe it was past, Monument Valley, or they would maybe go towards Colorado or something to get medicine that's not indigenous to this area, to come back to help somebody, because they knew that it wasn't here. And so they would go and they would communicate and they would get that medicine and they would bring it back and help take care of somebody. Now it could be, and he said this happens all over, right?
Yeah.
But now we can take that very same understanding and use it with information and ideas. Medicine is that. Medicine is ideas, and I would get frustrated sometimes, especially in programming, when I would have an idea and people would shut it down, like, no, that's not traditional, or that's not cultural, and it was just really hard for me, and it would get frustrating, but I felt like it might have been an echo chamber, right? It might have been like, okay, well, this is how we do youth services, this is how we do drug and alcohol, this is just the way we do it.
Yeah.
Not taking into consideration, like, hey man, look at what these guys are doing in the Bay, or look what these guys are doing down here in Albuquerque.
That it could be like really effective.
Let's bring it back and let's try that out here. And so when I think of like what you're saying is bringing these thoughts and ideas outside back into our communities can be helpful. Now they're not all going to work, right?
Yeah.
But then even taking it to the next step, what you were talking about is like being able to sit down and have those hard conversations. And you know what? At the end of the day, maybe we don't agree.
Yeah.
But we can still come back together and talk.
Yeah.
But this is what always happens, and the reason why I think I resonate with what you're saying so much is because it always happens to me. Let's say me and a friend, or me and a colleague or somebody have a conversation, and I don't agree with them.
Yeah.
Nah, I don't know about all that.
Yeah.
Whatever. But on the way home, thinking about it and thinking about, and I'm wrangling with it a little bit.
Yeah.
And maybe 2 or 3 days later, I'm like, yeah, maybe there is a little bit more there than I thought.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a little, so to even have a little bit of time to reflect on it, come back and have talk again, as opposed to being like, oh man, I'm getting all mad.
There was totally like I remember all these like instances like in my youth where I would like when I would say when they would get approached and they would get upset at me, and I was mad about the what was happening in the moment, and I was like, whatever like whatever old person, you're just like whatever dude, like I'm gonna skate away, like, and I'm gonna go like hang out, and like I'm just gonna do some like whatever. You're just old. And then I remember being upset and just being like, oh, whatever. And then like days later being like, it sunk in and it stayed. And I was like, oh, and then in the moment I was just like, oh, I just didn't like being wrong. It's like it's like no one likes being wrong. They don't be like, hey, you're a bad person. It's like it's like how they like view it. It's not how I viewed it too. It's like it was like I took it very personally. But the fact that they were, sometimes it's like it works because it's like they just told me the straight information, and maybe it wasn't like the most delicate way to convey information, but I got it. I understood what they were saying after like the first couple of times, and like the first times, and I'm like, and it was undeniable. I couldn't just be like whatever anymore. You know what I mean? Because it was like it was actually what I need. A lot of times it was what I needed, and for me, I'm like, oh, it's because they care, but it doesn't seem like they're caring when they're like, hey, don't do that. They're like, we don't do that, and it's like, or like especially a lot of times too, like, and especially in my community, like there's a lot of things that people just don't like talking about. They just won't talk about it. They'll like completely turn off and shut down. And I get it for like I was saying, for like being responsible and stuff. It's like there's a lot of stuff that we won't talk about, because like putting that out again, it does something. It's powerful to discuss certain ideas, to talk about certain things. It's very, very powerful, and I was always taught that as a kid. So when people would like turn off and shut down, I agree that they're like protecting themselves and they don't want to talk about it because it makes them think about it again, and it brings it up. Like it just like it like manifests it out of themselves, and it into the environment, into the world, into the universe. And I realized like, oh, okay, so it's another level of responsibility, but also that can be very harmful when we actually do need to talk about certain things. And it's like sometimes you need to talk about things that are uncomfortable, and we have to be able to do that too. It made me appreciate like how powerful it is to speak about stuff, because like when I was a young kid, like I didn't understand the trauma that my like elders went through. Like I didn't understand why they didn't want to talk about it, especially now and like how we understand things as in 2020. Like it's reopening trauma. It's not easy to do. It hurts. Like it hurts them again. It's when like people are victims of sexual assault, like victims of rape, like when they are forced to go into the courtroom to see their attacker again and again and again because of appeals and something didn't go through, and then something this happened. It's like you're making them do it again and again, and you're making them relive that awful experience over and over again, and you just bring it back up and you bring it back up. It's so harmful to do stuff like that, and it reminded me of like other types of trauma and like reopening trauma, and like how like I want it's vital information that we need, but also it's like it's very painful for them to redo it, to relive again. And like I always thought they were just shutting down and just not talking about it. Like I was like, oh, that's a problem that we have, and I would like, but I can't just like go and then like I can't just go and yank open the yeah, I just can't do that because it's not. I'm trying to like learn it and grow and like understand, but if I'm going to cause harm while doing it, like is it worth it? I don't think so. Like, and I feel lucky that also that because Celeste is my girlfriend, and we're both in the same tribe, which is like. So sometimes I forget like there are natives here who don't have anyone else. They don't have anyone from their nation, or they don't even have any indigenous friends, and it's like how lonely that is.
You're like freaking Ishi, yo.
Yeah, and I'm like I forget how lucky I am just being like, oh man, I have her here and she gets it. Like I don't have to like explain myself. I don't have to like like explain nuances of jokes, or like, oh, this is what this is, and like this is where I come from, this and this and this. I can just like we get it, like, and that's like that's so valuable, and I'm so grateful for her and her being here, and like it's like I forget to be thankful for things too. It's like that other people don't have.
I'm glad you bring that up because I have to remind myself of that too. It helps me remember that because I guess I've been on and off the reservation for so long, and I mean, I'm biracial, and so I don't necessarily, I can look like anything.
Yeah.
I have been mistaken for everything you
yeah.
possibly imagine. I've been mistaken for Asian too, you know, and so I got, early in my life, you know, I left home, go back and forth, but it's helped me. Like I feel at home anywhere.
Yeah,
like
me too.
The first time,
exactly.
I remember
the same
when
way.
I went to New York.
Yeah.
And my friends, when I got back, they were like, "Well, how was it? How was it? Was it culture shock? Was it different?" And the only response that I could honestly give to them was like, I felt like I'd never left.
Yeah.
Like it just felt like I felt at home. I
Yeah.
felt like I belonged.
I belong here.
The streets. People engaging with people, not engaging with people.
Yeah.
Like that was one of the things. But I think that was an accumulation over all the experiences in time.
Yeah.
And so then when I see like my cousins or my friends or even people I don't know, you know, making that transition over here, I have to remind myself that I've had a lot of experiences that's made this easier for me to just like walk out of here and you know someone talk to people or say someone says something to me and it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have to be a lot more mindful of that. by what you said helped me, reminded me of that.
I think it is like it kind of feels like a privilege. That use that word's overused, but it's just like it's because we don't think about how people are when they come here. Like they don't feel like they feel like they don't belong here, and I never feel that way. I've never been anywhere else except for here in the Americas. And like everywhere I go, I'm just like, this is all like native land. I always think about it like, oh man, because when I go to new places, I went to Arkansas and I was like, oh, it's cool. I wonder what the natives are like here. Like I wonder I wonder what they're up to. I wonder like where they're living, how they're doing. And it's like I can travel all of America, and every time I get there, I'm like, I wonder what the natives are doing here. Like all over the place. I'm just like, I'm in Boston. I was like, oh, what the natives are like here, and then like go to Chicago, and I'm like, oh, natives. I wonder what the natives are doing. Go to Arkansas, California, like I would all over the place, and then like I would when I get there, I'll be like, oh, let's learn about how the tribes are here, and like how many tribes are here, like what nation am I in right now, like, and it makes me feel good, like it's like. A lot of times when I see especially Americans, like how hard they like flex for like America stuff, like like all the flags and like the extreme nationalism, and like to me it's like, oh, they're insecure about, because they even though they know they're like America, they still a little bit feel like they don't belong, so they have to overcompensate and they have to like really go hard. And when I first realized that, it made me step off a little bit of being like, oh, they're also like, there's that insecurity there, and they're also like feel like they don't belong a little bit, so they have to like really overcompensate. I'm like, I feel bad for them in that sense. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, oh man, I feel bad that you don't like.
I'm glad you're willing to say that, because I've had some pretty, conversations where people kind of were very angry, and I can understand their sentiment, but what you just said, I believe, is at the core of indigenous people.
Yeah.
And indigenous people around the world, which is they saw people immigrating to this country that were lost, they were lonely, they were displaced.
Mm-hmm.
What did indigenous people do when they got here? They fed them,
Yeah.
they clothed them, they showed them warmth and compassion.
Yeah.
And now I'm not saying like all these horrible things that happen are justifiable without that, not at all. But what I am saying is like now I see that there's this anger and animosity that has turned into now let's be separate, sometimes even to a racial, even to that place where it's almost racial, like anti-blacks or anti-whites, and I get worried about that because, and this is why it's like, that was something that came to this country, which was the racism, the discrimination, the separatism, and now are we, indigenous people, embracing that very mindset and starting to like try to use that very mindset that
was not natural to us,
that imprisoned us, that put us on reservations, and now embracing it, now using it ourselves against other people. But
exactly.
Really at the core of ourselves, like you said, that, and I thought that was awesome, that you were like, but now that I saw that, I feel kind of sorry for them.
Yeah.
And I think that's really at the root of the beauty of indigenous people around the world, is a very empathetic, loving, caring soul.
Yeah.
And so that I had to jump on that one.
No,
cool.
I make fun of like settler culture, and I make fun of white people a lot. Like but I want them to what's in there. At the end of the day, I want them to also feel that like I also love them, even though I'm roasting them pretty good.
I love that you roast. I need you to roast on the Utes a little bit, man.
Oh my god, I don't feel like it's my place.
That's good. You gotta craft that one out.
Because I'm like, I love that we have like these long relationships with each other. Our tribes and our nations have these long relationships with each other. That's like that are older than like every city in America, and it's like it's a different relationship. And I'm like I'm more conscious of that than me interacting with other Native people, just for being like famously rivals, you know, like being so close together. Oh, and when I grew up, like that discrimination for the like towards like you people, it was totally okay. Like no one ever stopped it. No one ever came in and being like, you know, you people are like this and this and this. Everyone just like yeah, like they just accepted it, and it's like oh, it perpetuates it,
It
and
was
like
the same thing back home when I grew up too. It
yeah.
was the same way, and I think again, it really goes back to how has that shifted and how has that changed, and I